So imagine this. You're here, you want to analyze a contract. You come in here, you get your contract. This is what it looks like. Upload it. So we upload it, and then you're waiting. After a few minutes, you get an email telling you what exactly was in that email. So, show you the email, and boom. So we get the effective date, provider, the client, how long, duration, compensation of the contract, termination notice, and the governing law. So like where the contract is legally viable, and then even an executive summary of the scope of services. So it's pretty straightforward. It's not that advanced yet. I'm still working on it, but we have the minimum viable product, right? So how it works is you upload a document to an S3 bucket. Notification of the item being put there, it's called a put notification, invokes a Lambda function called extract text. And so what that's going to do is use text extract to extract all the text from that PDF document. And then it's going to send that notification when it's done to SNS. And SNS has one subscriber, which is this Lambda function. And the reason, and I'll explain why we do this in a little bit after. So once we extract the text, boom, this Lambda function is invoked, and we are now processing the extracted text with AWS Comprehend for NLP analysis, or natural language processing. Basically what that means is we're trying to understand what the key elements and text in the file are, so that we can actually use them in our summary. Then once we have all our NLP done, we're going to store this in the database with a unique identifier, so that every document that's uploaded, you can find it based on its unique ID. And it's going to have all the components to it. So all the NLP analysis, everything is going to be stored along with that ID in the database storage. And we're using DynamoDB for that. Then there is a Dynamo Streams active. And so every time there's a new item added, we're going to invoke a third Lambda function, which that function is in charge of just reading the database, extracting the information that we need for the summary, and then it will send an email notification using SNS to the subscriber, which would be you in this case. So very simple. To go back to the actual design choices and why I designed it this way. So initially, it was literally just one Lambda function. So instead of having like two Lambda functions like we do right here, I had one doing both the text extract and the comprehend. And the reason why I separated it is for two reasons. One, we want to keep Lambda functions to a very specific and quick task, because that's why you would use a Lambda function, right? Lambda functions are supposed to be used for very quick tasks. If you have anything that's going to take a long time, you might as well just use an EC2 instance to pretty much, handle that. Lambda functions can go up to 15 minutes, but that is their maximum. They will time out after that. However, I just wanted to keep everything separate for the second reason, which was easy debugging, right? So if I have one Lambda function doing text extract and comprehend at the same time, it's going to be a lot more difficult to debug, where the error is happening and why it's happening, versus having two functions that do a specific task. And I'm not going to lie, this actually did make my debugging process so much more easier, because I could pinpoint exactly where the error was happening using CloudWatch logs. So what I would do is I would upload the file and then watch the logs for the extract text, the extract text function here. And then it would tell me error, where it errored, the line it errored, whatever, I needed to know. And then boom, I would go in and fix it, rerun it. And then boom, it was working, right? And I was like, okay, this function works now. Now let's see if the second step is working. And we go in, analyze the logs, repeat the same process. And that's all we did. SNS here, what this does is further decouple the serverless architecture. This allows scaling very quickly, right? So if we just had in this Lambda extract text and then immediately go into this Lambda, this could cause bottlenecking, or we could lose certain, or we could lose information. So what we do is we put it in an SNS, and then that way when this is done, it'll push the top to the topic, hey, I'm done. And then the top will be like, okay, yo, this guy's done. Now we need to do NLP analysis. And then it'll push a message out to the subscribers, which in this case is only which is only one Lambda function. Be like, hey, ready for processing. You could think about it like that. And then Lambda's like, all right, cool, time to go to work. Does its NLP analysis. And then we come over here and finish off the workflow. So that was kind of the design choice I had there. I'm sure there's a bunch of modifications and ways that can make this more cost effective and all that stuff, and I am working on that. But I had the minimum viable product available here, and it works. So what I'm gonna be doing now is just making sure I complete it by making I might make a front end for it just to like see how that would look, but I don't. The whole point is to use AWS and learn, architecture building and all that stuff. Not really so much front end design and all that stuff. But what I could do to make this a little better is make it a full-fledged app. We would need a front end where we could actually upload the files to the S3 bucket and not use the AWS console to upload. And for that, we'd need a few different things. And then after that, it's pretty self-functioning. Like, yeah, that would be the only thing we need to add to make it fully application worthy. Is just add a front end and a way for people to access it, because you never want to make that S3 bucket public. You always want to have a cloud front or an API through your front end that accesses that S3 bucket, and it's just more secure that way. What I learned is that AWS takes identity and access management extremely serious. Like, the bulk of my issues were mostly due to incorrect provisioning of permissions to the Lambda functions to do what they need to do. So just to put this in perspective, right? Just so for this Lambda function to get the file out of here and send the text extract, it needs to have permissions to access the bucket and also access text extract. If it doesn't have either one, it will just fail because it just won't, like, Amazon won't let you do it. So that was an interesting learning experience, just seeing how important AWS takes IAM, identity access and management. And essentially what you do, and so like I'll just explain these three parts because it's pretty simple. Okay, so first off, you have a role for the Lambda function. Every Lambda function you create, you can have a set role for the permissions, or you can create a new role for every Lambda function. I just created a new role for this use case. But essentially what we do is in the bucket policy, we would say, hey, give this Lambda role the permissions to see my event notifications and also read the objects in the bucket. And then that's all you really need from that, because we're not really putting objects in there. We're not deleting. We're not doing anything. We're just reading the objects and getting them from that bucket to be able to process and text extract. So once you have that, that is half the battle won now. So now we need text extract permissions. So what we do is just make sure that that Lambda function can access text extract and the appropriate method and function calls that you need for text extract, and then assign that to the Lambda role as well. And then once you have that done, you can now do this workflow. And then also you need to have so yeah, it gets pretty deep, right? So SNS, you also need to have access in the Lambda role to make sure you can submit to the topic, like whatever you're submitting. So it just gets very deep. But yeah, so that was the bulk of my debugging, was making sure the right permissions were assigned. And then the other part of it was actually coding the Lambda functions. I did it in Python. And I can show you what that looks like. I had 3 functions in total like you saw. So the first one's called extract text, which you guessed it, extracts the text. Next one is called a process will comprehend. You guessed it. It's going to do the NLP processing using comprehend, and then the email to summary to lawyer. We'll just look at the extract text. They're not that long. I think they're each like around 100 lines. But here is the code, right? So we're using a couple different libraries here to get the job done. We are using environment variables to hold the SNS topic ARN and then the text extract role ARN. So again, just making sure these are just, IAM stuff. But yeah, you can see here it was a total of 113 lines, not that bad. And I just have plans to pretty much, make this kind of, a little bit more ironed out, a little more smooth. That's my first project in AWS. I got a whole bunch more planned and I'm going to be working on them. And, as I work on these, I'll be showing them off to you guys, kind of explaining my whole methodology, diagrams. All these are going to be on my GitHub as well. So be sure to check that out every once in a while. I will be making like cloud formation scripts for these. So it's a lot easier for you to just get them set up and you don't have to really sit there in the console creating everything like I did. But this is, I'm just starting out. So I'm just trying to get used to actually building the architectures and seeing how it all works together. And then I'll move into more of an infrastructure as a code way of building things because that's how it's done in the real world. But yeah, guys, appreciate you stopping by and I'll see you in the next one.